Anin Bojo, greetings, listeners. We're back again with another Ancestral Voices We Belong podcast, and it is spring. We're into April. April is a beautiful month to start thinking about gardening and getting out and enjoying the warmer weather. Hopefully the snow is departing from, all of the land, because I'd like to see the green again. We got a lot of snow this year, and I'm ready for another experience. So I'm happy to be here. I am your co-lead, Kim Wheatley. We do have a very special guest with us today, so I'm excited to share that with you. I'm looking forward to the responses and interactions that listeners have to the podcast we've released to date. And I just want to encourage you and remind you that if you really want to support the podcast, please share, like, comment, so our algorithm can improve. But also we can kind of share what it is that we're offering a bit more broadly. As many of you may or may not know, we are committed to uplifting Indigenous, African, Caribbean, and Black creative voice in spaces and places like this, like a podcast, to really not only reach the masses, but encourage people to have a listen on this particular or on these particular communities and what it is that they're doing, because the diversity is extraordinary and the brilliance and contribution is really uplifting humanity in ways that we really need at this time as we go through very strenuous times politically and worldwide. I think we need a little sunshine every once in a while. So I'm wearing yellow today to embrace that sunshine. And I already have my guest on the line, and I'm so excited to introduce this young man. We have been friends for, the call just dropped. I'm going to call him right back. We have been friends for about a decade now. In that time, I have watched him grow, expand, share, really develop not only what his focus is, but I've watched him embrace other ideas and opportunities in who he is and what it is that he's trying to put out in the world in a good way, with a good heart and a good mind. So I'm going to read his biography because I don't memorize those things. And I'm going to tell you just a little bit about his background. So Jah'Kota, that is his stage name, is an Afro-Indigenous artist and entrepreneur. His father's from Kingston, Jamaica, and his mother is Nakota Assiniboine. They're signatories to Treaty 4. He was born and raised in Winnipeg and now lives full-time on Ocean Man First Nation in Saskatchewan. Jah'Kota has had 2 songs reach number 1 on the Indigenous Music Countdown, amazing, and has been nominated for multiple awards, not surprising, including the Indigenous Music Awards for 2019, the Native American Music Awards, in 2024, and the Sask Music Awards in 2025. So the accolades go on and on. His name is Justin. His stage name is Jah'Kota, Holness. He can talk more about his name. Uses music as a way to amplify the message of self-determination and to empower the welfare of people and the planet. Welcome, Justin.
Yes, thank you so much, Kim. I am so excited to be here with you. So thank you for the invitation. I'm grateful to be here, full of gratitude.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you. I know you have a very dense schedule, like many of us, and to make time to come and talk on our humble little podcast to create awareness about who you are, but also to really embrace the intersectionality of what your genetic background is really important. And it's one of the areas that I feel is under-recognized and under-embraced. People want you to choose one space to be a part of, to belong in. And I think that is a great injustice to the wholeness of who we are, pun intended. I love your last name. Like, it's just so cool. But can you just maybe take a moment to introduce yourself? Sometimes our guests like to, introduce themselves in a very specific way. Maybe they speak the language and they have a spirit name, or, maybe they have a distinct way in which they like to embrace the ties of who they are. I know I read your bio, but if there's anything else you want to add, but in particular to speak about the name Jah'Kota.
Chan Dewash De Nam Bechin Nuzinkdano. In Jah'Kota, that means I come to you in a good way with a good heart. Amba Newash De Wakantanka Panamaya. I thank Creator for this day, for this moment in time. Osheti Shagoi is the sacred seven council fires of which the Nakota people have traditionally been part of, residing here in the prairies. As mentioned, I'm Afro-Indig. I'm very proud of both sides of my family, my mother being Nakota Assiniboine, and my father from Kingston, Jamaica. That mix and blend has really guided my life. So, the mission and the purpose of your podcast, I think, really resonates with just the way I carry myself as a person, but also, Kim, like you as a human being. I think relationships are so important, and our relationship has standed the test of time. So, to be here, to be invited, is just a testament to, the things that we're doing collectively to bring positivity and love into the world, right? So I'm grateful for that. And my name is really kind of an interesting story, actually. So my full name is Justin Alexander Holness. That's what it says on my birth certificate, right? And my dad, being Jamaican, the Jah was not a coincidence. Jah Rastafari is a big part of, the Jamaican culture. And so as I became, more mature, as I'm an older teenager, young adult stepping into maturity, we always want to find what our cool factor is, right? So as I started creating music, Jah was like my name that I would make reference to. Jah was like literally just the first three letters was my original artist name in the beginning. But as my music career matured as well, I started talking to some of my indigenous friends. Shout out to Brock Lewis. We can get into some of those stories later. But I was always like, man, Jah just seems a little too short. It's like literally just one syllable. I feel like it needs a little bit more, rhythm to it. And so we're talking, we're hanging out, and then I happened to step out of the room for a second. I came back in, and my homie Brock Lewis is like, what about Jah'Kota? That's like your dad's side and your mom say it. I'm like, my bro, that's perfect. So we've been running with it ever since. And then just to kind of close the loop on the story, I was invited by Senator Lillian Dick for one of the first cohorts for indigenizing the Senate with the Aboriginal Senate Committee. I can't even remember the year. It was quite some time ago, like 2013 maybe.
Yes.
And it was an invitation with some First Nation Indigenous leaders from across Canada that were brought into the Senate to share our youthful perspective on reconciliation. And so when I stepped into the room and it was my turn to, share, my name tag said Justin Jah'Kota Holness. And for some reason, I thought that was so cool because, first of all, I didn't tell them to do that, right? Yeah. They just did it on their own. And I've never seen my name kind of put in that order before. And I was like, going to the Senate, you would expect it to be so official, right? Justin Holness, you know what I'm saying? So to have my artist name as my middle name was super cool. And it honestly inspired me to drop bars in the Senate, and I made history for being the first Native artist to drop a verse in the Senate.
Wow.
And so my artist name has kind of really changed my life. And I've really taken it as a person, personal. I've internalized it in a good way, and it's taken me all across the country. So
amazing.
I'm grateful for my artist name. Yeah. I'm grateful for my parents. Shout out to my friends and
such a
everybody
good story.
who's kind of been interacted, no doubt.
So does Kota, is it a language word?
Well, Kota means friend. Like Kona in Jah'Kota means friend.
Oh.
So in a way, it's indirectly means that, but yeah, like Kota is the second half of Jah'Kota.
Oh, I love it. That's such a good story and such a bringing together of, a dual identity. And, when it comes to identity today, this is one of the reasons why we have this podcast is identity is diverse and convoluted, especially as the world shrinks through physical mobility and access, through the age of technology. And, we're good looking to people. So we're going to make babies, with other nations, other people. And that those babies sometimes have difficulty finding a place of belonging, but with your name and the embracing of that. And we know in the Caribbean, Jah is it's a reference to godliness and, the Most High in some ways. And I see you as a person who's always, extending their reach up like the Most High. You have such a good heart. And in your bio, it says Afro-Indigenous. And this is one of the terms that people are trying to utilize to capture the intersectionality of an Indigenous person and somebody else, some other nation. And I'm not sure, I've also heard Black and Indigenous person of color, and I'm sure they're going to come up with some other terms. I hate Black and Indigenous person of color as an acronym. I don't want anybody referring to me as BIPOC. It's very dehumanizing, and I find it really offensive. But the term Afro-Indigenous, is that something you're comfortable with? Does it encapsulate all of who and what you are and who you come from?
Love that question. So, when we're talking about identity, when we're talking about labels, when we're talking about descriptions, that's really where I think things start to get challenging. I was having a conversation with one of my good friends, Adeline Bird, and she mentioned that term, Afro-Indigenous. And it really just kind of resonated with me at the time. Mm-hmm. And so I make reference to myself because I think it's just a universal way of people kind of knowing who I am without saying, oh, my dad is from Jamaica, from Kingston, and my mom is Jah'Kota, Assiniboine from Saskatchewan. That's a long-winded way to describe it when you could just simply say Afro-Indigenous.
True.
So with that being said, in context, I think when we really break down these terminologies, I think the best reference is actually referring to that individual from their family name or from their nation that they come from. So, I would prefer to be called Jah'Kota and Jamaican, right? Like those are the places that I'm from. Mm-hmm. BIPOC is a term that's used, I think, as a generalization to refer to a large group of people. Afro-Indig is just a terminology used to refer to a large group of people that come from those regions and territories, of which would have different nationhoods that they would come from. Yeah.
True.
So sometimes it's just a description for a group of people who reside in particular regions or territories. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what my reflections are. It's always a continued challenging narrative to have, but like when you break it down, I'm from the prairies, and the language that our peoples here speak would be Jah'Kota. And just to close this off, when the settlers came down here and they're trying to ask us, who are we? We refer to ourselves as Jah'Kota. But Jah'Kota, when you translate it, just means like your friend. Right? When you start breaking down some of these words that are First Nation or Indigenous words, they just refer to being a human being. And so when people are asking us, well, who are you? I'm a human being just like you, right? I'm your friend. I'm a relative. So it really depends in the context of the conversation, I would say, or the context of that dialogue as to like how we're referencing ourselves.
True. And I also think it's kind of the direction of colonialism. Everybody has to fit in a slot. If you don't fit in the slot, then you're probably invisible, silenced, and never given an opportunity to kind of step forward and offer the uniqueness of who and what you are. I love the way that not only do you explain it, but you embrace it and just accept that this is just one pathway forward. Because really, we don't want to get stuck on the terminology. We really want to get immersed in the brilliance of who the individual is. I have Afro-Indigenous children who use that term as well, and they find comfort and belonging in that. And it's also a new journey for myself with the discovery of my bio dad, and that's a whole other story in and of itself. But as I navigate terminologies, I'm less interested in that, but always curious about what people gravitate towards, because as Indigenous people in this country, we keep getting renamed, right? There's so many names for us. It's ridiculous. And the latest rendition is Indigenous. And then, that's only one aspect of who I am. I have this whole other component that I want to bring in. And that certainly isn't reflected in the name Kim Wheatley. It doesn't tell you much about us, but your stage name tells us a lot. And it has a certain, finesse to it that's really easy to say, but it feels really powerful. So I'm not surprised it changed the course of your life. And I guess that really did. Yeah, I think names matter. Right? Words matter. We know this as Indigenous people in this country. We know this as people of color in this country, that words can be a double-edged sword in lots of ways, and the way that they're used and the context in which they're embraced. But, I want to move on I have a couple questions for you, because I think it's important to give people a sense of just who you are and all the things that you do. We talked in the bio about you being a musical artist and being recognized for that, but you do so much more than that. So do you want to share some of the other things that you do and how that inspires your kind of movement forward as you grow and mature into a placement in society? Do you still qualify as a youth, or have you jumped that bar?
Heck no, I am beyond the youth category.
Because I think that's like till 29, right? Like under 29 is youth category. Because I met you as a youth, like a shiny, brilliant, energetic youth, and I've known you for years now, and I've watched you rise into a broader commitment on trying to lift people up. So share a little bit more about what you do beyond music.
Listen, some people's youth is up to 35.
Yeah, that's true.
So
okay.
I totally appreciate it.
But I think around that age,
listen, I'm 38 trips around the sun. 38. And I got to give gratitude to the melanin that I have in my genetics that keep me young.
Yeah.
So I've been around the sun a few times.
Yeah.
And, I think my work and my passion and drive in what I do is very much rooted in a pursuit of freedom. Yeah. A pursuit of freedom that my First Nation side, my Jah'Kota side have been pursuing since this colonial construct has been attempting to gentrify us and continues to gentrify us today. I think a sense of freedom in the sense of the emancipation of slavery from the people from Africa and the Gold Coast, and the freedom that the Jamaicans have established their independence. So I think a lot of the work that I do stems from a foundation of being raised with a First Nations mother and a Jamaican father, encouraging me to be the best version of myself, and knowing the heritage and historical context of where we come from and what we've had to overcome. And we can get really passionate about some of those dark side of the history.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it really comes down to the choices that I'm making as a person in this life that I have been blessed to live. And so I've just chosen not to oblige to the status quo. I have just chosen to question authority.
Yeah.
I've just chosen to understand, why do we need to do it that way? Why can't we do it this way? What is the other pathways? Why do we speak only English? How come we're not speaking Jah'Kota?
So how does that translate?
How come we're not speaking Jamaican?
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, those terms are really important to kind of rationalize in regards to, like, what is the language you're speaking? Because what really resonated with me is understanding that there's spells in our language. Spelling, English.
Yes.
Right? There's spells in our language.
We know
so
about that for sure. But we still have to navigate the system. And you found some ways to navigate that system beyond your music.
Yeah, it carries spirit. So I think my work has really been fundamental in regards to achieving self-determination, wanting to do my part to contribute to my family's freedom, to reestablish and reaffirm the work that our ancestors have done, that my grandparents have done, that my great-grandparents have done, in order to live the life that we have the privilege of living today. And so I've just pursued that, and it's really been challenging because it's hard for me to work for somebody else that's not my nation. It's hard for me to work for somebody else who doesn't have the best interest of the people at mind, at heart, or at the foundation of their company. It's really hard. And so I've just naturally stepped into entrepreneurship. Music has been my first taste of that. It's been a way that I've been able to generate my own revenue. And to fast forward, I've now learned how to use my income and generate more income from the money that I make through investments, through dividends. And now I'm stepping into investing because it's another way to create my own source revenue where I don't have to continue to trade my time for money. So it's a very interesting pathway being an entrepreneur, having the historical or historical context of, the lineage we come from and trying to establish yourself in the colonial construct today.
I love how you reframe that from his story to her story, and having that kind of inclusional slant. Because one thing I know about you is you are very sensitive to matriarchal everything, whether it's leadership, presence, voice. And I have seen you in many roles, but one of the most common roles I see you in is as a MC. You help lead people and keep the event buoyant and connected. You do your research. You have these little jewels that you drop every once in a while as an MC that are very inspiring to witness, but also to remember, because being an MC is not just about performance. It's not performative. It's leadership. And leadership is what I hear from the path you're taking. Because right now I think you're in university. Yes?
Yeah, just finishing actually.
At 38, it's never too late to go. And,
never.
And you're still continuing on with your music.
Yes.
And you moved from Ontario back to your home community to pursue not only this education, but I guess to reweave the relationships you have with community and how you're going to be in service to them. Is there anything specific that you're doing with community or youth or at large that is holding you there?
Yeah, let's put it out there. I'm going to be running for chief and council as a counselor. Woo-hoo! And I think, on that note, I think it's really important for me to clarify the reason, because I've witnessed a lot of, our people step into positions of leadership, and sometimes you wonder what has been achieved in that time frame. And so I've always contemplated, what would I do if I was in that position? Why would I run for a position of leadership? And the Creator has helped establish for me that the only reason I would run for any position of leadership, whether that's First Nation governance, or the broader provincial governance, or the broader Canadian governance, it would be because the work that I'm trying to accomplish, that role would just help me achieve it. So that would mean that regardless if I get voted in or not, I'm still doing the work anyways. Just that role, that position of leadership would allow me the resources, the networks, to be able to achieve those tasks or advocate for the things that need to change. So that's really why I'm running for council, is because first of all, Ocean Man has invested into my education, and I want to give my educational experience back to my nation, number one. And there's a lot of things that I feel I can contribute to our community economic development, and I want to give that to my community first, to my nation first, to our youth, and really do my part to honor, our golden age,
Yeah.
So stepping into council is something I'm pursuing next, which means, politics, which I'm kind of excited about.
Yeah.
I'm starting to really enjoy, economic development, community development from a political landscape, because it allows us to kind of push the narrative forward and change policy or integrate new different forms of achieving self-determination. So that's what we're stepping into in this next phase of life.
That is amazing. Congratulations. I think you have to have a very thick skin, to jump into politics.
God.
I've watched Wab Canoe, and he's like a shining example across the country.
Oh, exactly.
And he too has a musical background. I mean, he was a rapper, and now, he's the premier. And, you have a background of singing, in the same genre. Am I correct? Is that how you would frame it?
Yeah, we're both rappers.
and you both hold such a strong, unwavering commitment to the greater good. I mean, definitely, I see a heavier weight in uplifting indigeneity into a more sovereign recognition. The sovereignty of who we are is just not digested in Canadians' minds at large. We're still seen as kind of a handout, or never a hand up, or never a place to go and tap into the brilliance and wisdom of our millennia of experience and how to operate and engage in very evolved ways, especially when it comes to politics, right? Because our politics are really garnered around our clan systems and the equality of that. We have the colonial construct certainly inserted and kind of smothering that traditional way of governance. But I think, we see across the country a shift is needed in just how we're engaging as people. And our country is growing, and it's becoming more and more culturally diverse. And with that growth, I'm seeing a receding of our placement. Even though we're the fastest growing population per capita in Canada, we're also the youngest per capita in Canada. And we have the most entrepreneurs per capita in Canada. 80% of the entrepreneurs in Indigenous communities are women. And so entrepreneurship
I'm snapping my fingers.
I know, me too. So, and it is the wave of the future to kind of reinsert or rebalance what matriarchal and patriarchal leadership looks like, because historically that was in balance and harmony for us. And so to see us moving closer and closer towards that, I get that from some of your music and just like how you really speak about women especially in the rap form, in such a respectful way, in such a positive and affirmation style. And I wondered, like, what is it your mom? What is it about kind of lifting up matriarchs in your music? Because you do it often. What is it about that messaging, and why do you keep pushing that forward?
Thank you for that question, Kim. It really, when you ask me that question and when I start to reflect on how I would respond, it really centers me in my heart. And a big part of that is because of my grandmothers. I was raised with 3 grandmothers because they're all sisters. And I have, some quick stories. One of my grandmothers, Laura Big Eagle, she was one of the lead negotiators to fight for our land back and reestablished Ocean Man in 1990. So our Jah'Kota Assiniboine people, we were amalgamated, the Ocean Man family, the Ocean Man people, we were amalgamated onto White Bear Reserve. And my grandmother, Mikushi, Laura Big Eagle, was one of those lead negotiators to reestablish our own landscape. So she became the first chief of the reestablished Ocean Man in 1990 until her last breath. And now her daughter, my auntie, is the current chief of Ocean Man. So Ocean Man is the first all-female chief and council in this country. And so that's a legacy that, resides in my family. And so I'm really proud of that. And I have a memory of just like, being on the powwow grounds, and my auntie or my kushi, my grandmother, is driving on a golf cart, right? Around the powwow grounds, just bossing it, chiefing it up, right?
Yep.
And like, as a young kid, as a youth, you're always just running around seeing what kind of trouble you can get into. And so I'm running around, and I can hear my kushi call my name, like, Justin, come over here. I'm like, oh snap, am I in trouble? Like, I was all nervous. She's like, take a seat. So I sit down in the golf cart with her, and she like takes out this big stack of money. That's what I remember. It is this big stack of money. And she gives me this red $50 bill. And I just felt so special. I'm like, whoa, like, what do I do with this? She's like, put it away. She's like, hey, you can go now. I'm just like, okay. So she just was giving me a little gift. And I felt like the specialist kid in that moment. Like, that's my grandma. That's my kushi, and she just hooked me up.
Oh.
And so, just to share another story, so my mom's mom, my kushi, Leona Croscamp, she was the first Jah'Kota language teacher at the First Nation University of Canada. And so when I learned that, I've always wanted to take those classes. And so, getting me in my heart here.
Aww.
But my kushi crossed over, just a few years ago, and I've always wanted to take her to those Jah'Kota classes, and she's been retired for some time, and she's in the spirit world now. But I was able to go when I moved back here, and I enrolled at the FNU. I was able to take Jah'Kota 100 and Jah'Kota 101 to honor her legacy. And so again, I have another, woman in my family who has, shattered barriers, implemented social impact and positive change in the community, and just changed the course of the future. Mm-hmm. And so I've always honored my grandmothers in that way, and been inspired by the work they do. And then, my mom, just a little girl on the res who wasn't raised by her biological parents, because, unfortunately, we know the dark history of residential school. Mm-hmm. And my mother went to day school. And instead of, spiraling in the negative direction, she chose to use it to spark her fire. And she became the change she wants to see in the world. And she decided to live a healthy life so she can pass on that healthy life to her kids, right?
Right.
And that changed me and my sister's life. And so in my newest music, in my last album, Echelon, I have a verse in there that says, when you learn to heal yourself, you can pass it down. That's generational wealth. And so I've been inspired by these women, my auntie, Laura's daughter being the longest reigning chief, surpassing her mom, maintaining that matriarchal lineage.
Wow.
She's inspired me. I've worked alongside her for the last 4 or 5 years. She's been showing me the way. It's been a challenge because, listen, she's a hard woman, so she doesn't treat me no different than she would treat anybody else. And I have to learn to listen and keep my mouth shut and just do what she says,
I hear you.
She knows what's best. And so it's been an incredible journey to witness my auntie as chief, my grandmothers paving the way, my mom doing her part to break those generational curses. And I'm just trying to uphold that. So a lot of that comes from the women in my life. And,
right.
We can get into it in another conversation. My dad, he's raised me to be a man of integrity. He's raised me to be a man of dignity. And so he's raised me as a young child to always respect the women in my life. So I owe a homage to my father as well.
He's done a good job. He's done a good job. Justin, you are one of the most respectful, honorable people. And that was my next question. I was like, I hear the Indigenous heavy part of who you are,
Yeah.
but I don't hear as much about kind of the Black side of who you are, and how how your dad is intersecting in your current life, but also the influences, and we are influenced by the people who raise us, whether it's our parents
Big
or
time.
grandparents, aunties, whoever it is. And those influences last a long time. They also can shape what kind of person you become or you choose not to become. Right.
Facts.
So when we look at a residential school, it was shaping a whole cycle of people that were physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally unwell, unbalanced, unconnected, just everything that is not good for a human being. And so the reclamation
True.
of
Yeah.
healing and presentness and identity is really, we're seeing it in two generations pretty much, from the the last residential school closing in 1996, and we're seeing
Yeah.
certainly like that first generation that wasn't in the schooling, the impacts of being raised by people who were horrifically treated, right? And then we're seeing another generation, which I see as your generation, just exploding with joy and positivity, recognition of the past, not forgetting it, but not subscribing to being downtrodden, really going into the world of entrepreneurship and not afraid to shine and not afraid to speak up and not afraid to ask for justice in a way that is equitable and truly just, in a system that it continues to be unjust to who we are. And if you are a person of color in this country, for sure, you experience the unjustness more frequently than you do the justice. So I'm thinking about how you've embraced some of that in your music, because music's so important to you. And it's a universal language, right? People have
Exactly.
really looked to music for healing, for solace, for joy, for celebration. Like, music is just everywhere all the time. And the beauty about music is it lasts beyond your life walk. My condolences to losing your grandmother,
Yeah.
by the way, because I think, a life well lived leaves us lots and lots of beautiful memories and empowerment to draw from. But the loss is real for a long time. And what I hear
Yeah.
in some of your music is kind of a reclamation of, we are grieving and we've lost much, but we're still here. And the kind
Exactly.
of resistance to becoming icons of the past and really cementing our presentness here today.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're touching on my heartstrings, and like, I get a lot of my musical influences from my dad's side.
Wow.
So part of the reason, the inspiration of, kind of the stuff I'm involved in is derived from my mom's side of the family, is because I live in Turtle Island. If I lived in Jamaica, it would be a different outcome, right? It'd be a different result. But I've met my grandfather one time in my life because he lived in London, England, on my dad's side. And I've never met my grandmother on my dad's side. And my dad never got to know his grandparents. So there's a big gap in the sense of our family lineage from my dad's side that we just don't know too much about.
Right.
And so because I don't visit Jamaica as much as I'm existing and living and breathing here in Turtle Island, my involvement in like what's just is a result of that. And I think we live and exist in traditional First Nation territories. So the justice is reestablishing that sovereignty and that self-determination for Indigenous peoples here in this country. So my dad, though, coming from Jamaica in 1975, he was a DJ. From there, he was in a band, right? And so I grew up going into the garage and seeing, listening, hearing, sensing, feeling the rhythms and the rhymes of reggae music.
Right.
I got records and turntables and like those older traditional forms of music and technology and innovation. influenced me musically. And then my brother on my dad's side was a DJ. And so as I got older, I was able to be illegal in the club, passing my brother the records under the DJ table in the club, right? Like I started getting influence from my dad's side of being a musician and spinning music and reggae and rhymes and rhythms from my dad's side. And so a lot of my musical influences comes from my dad's side of the family. So
I love it.
I think me musically is my way of honoring and upholding the Jamaican side of me. It is upholding and honoring, you know, the influences of my father and my brother.
Yeah.
And so it's just an interesting blend. Like that's Jah'Kota. You know what I mean?
Oh, I cannot believe how deep you travel with each question, and you know how rich the way that you think about it, the way you feel about it, the way that you deliver who and what you are into the world. Your parents certainly are deserving of so much accolades. They raised you right. They raised you well. And I'm so honored to call you friend. We have traveled through so much time. We don't have a lot of time left. But the genre of music that you sing, rap, it kind of has a sordid side to it. And people think of it as just very unpalatable. And yet the kind of rap you do is very conscious. And I heard recently that there is like a conscious rap. How would you frame the type of rap music that you do?
You know, it's such an interesting question because I've never really contemplated that. I've had to contemplate it obviously when I'm submitting my music for things, uploading it to the platforms. Like it asks you what genre, but I've never really like associated myself to the category. I've just associated myself to what is the message I'm putting in my song. That's really what I contemplate about the most. And it just so happens to be in the form of rap because that's kind of the rhythm of the language sequences and the timing sequences in the delivery over the instrumentation.
For sure.
For me, like the rap is because my brother gave me my first cassette tape. You know, we already talked about my age, so we can say this proudly. But like my brother gave me my first cassette tape, and I had artists on there like Redman, Method Man, Notorious B.I.G.
Of course.
Like these were wordsmiths back in those days.
Yes.
And so I was influenced by that, and my dad would always like tell me to make sure I'm staying in pocket, make sure I'm riding the rhythm, make sure I'm listening to the bass line. And so my tempo has always just been, you know, around those elements of music. And so at the end of the day, though, Kim, one of the things that my dad has raised me in the music and the influence from him and my brother, it's all about the message and what we're saying.
Yep.
So consciously, there's conscious reggae, there's conscious rap, but when you really dissect that, it's just those individual artists speaking their truth and sharing their story.
Love it.
And that's all I'm doing is speaking my truth, sharing my story. And I'm really, in closing, I'm really just trying to encapsulate the time and era that I feel honored to live and exist in. I've witnessed the resurgence of our people. I've witnessed our people step into their power. I've witnessed people like Kim Wheatley step into her power, make a podcast, have her voices heard, and share the voices of many. I've witnessed these things that inspire me, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm really just trying to capture all these little moments in time.
I think
the
you do a
rise
beautiful
of the
job.
matriarch.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
You do a beautiful, beautiful
really
job.
what it is.
We're coming to the close of our session.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to kind of put you on pause there because we could talk for hours, literally.
Oh,
but,
for sure.
When my co-lead is here, I always like to close with something a little fun. Now, this is random. I don't want you to overthink it, but I do something called RFQ. Now, most people know it as, request for quote, but this is rapid fire questions for me. And I have a couple questions I'm going to pose to you. Just give whatever happens at the top of your mind, and it just gives a bit of an insight to listeners, like who we are and how we think about the world. But also, it gives a bit of a flavor of your personality beyond what we've experienced in your professional sense. Because this has been such a pleasure, such a treat to talk to you. But first question: what is your favorite season and why? Quick.
spring, and because it's the renewal of life on the planet.
Same here. That was my answer. Where is your dream vacation?
Jamaica.
Been there many
Always
times.
for the fruit,
the food.
the food, and the ocean. Let's go.
How many languages should a person speak?
As many as they can acquire that's necessary for them to exist and build relationships.
Ooh, that was a deep dive. How many phone numbers do you know by heart?
0, just my own.
I grew up having to memorize phone numbers because we had a phone book, and today everybody just looks at their phone, and it's like, you need to memorize phone numbers. You might lose a phone. You might drop a phone. Okay. Last question. Do you have a favorite?
I know my dad and my mom's number too.
Thank God.
My dad and my mom.
You've redeemed yourself because they're going to listen to this podcast, right? Do you have a favorite candy?
Oh my God. Watermelon.
That's not candy. That's a fruit.
Yo, that's candy. Listen, that's the Earth's candy. If you don't know, you're tripping.
I love watermelon. I've loved the time that I've spent with you. I love your joy. I respect you so much. I thank you so much for being a guest on our podcast. And I look forward to witnessing all the beautiful things you're going to be doing moving forward. Quickly, can you please share with listeners how to follow you, how to find you, how to support you?
First of all, thank you, Kim, for all the work that you're doing, paving the way for us next generation. We appreciate you, and I appreciate you for inviting me to be part of this podcast. So all my love to you. And anybody can find me anywhere at Jah'Kota Music. You can go to jahkotamusic.com. All my Jah'Kota Music on all social media. You can tap in and stay connected.
Spell Jah'Kota for listeners, please.
Jahkota.
Any last surprises coming out that we should be aware of? You just released Echelon.
Yeah, we just released Echelon. We got a new podcast we're working on, so we're excited for that. So stay tuned for a podcast by myself just to kind of continue to empower the welfare of people and the planet.
Are you on Spotify and iTunes?
I'm everywhere and anywhere you stream or listen to music.
That is awesome. Be well, and we'll be in touch. Take good care. I'm going to wish you 3 things: peace of mind, good long life, and good health always and always, my friend. Take good care.
Nina Washte, gratitude, one love.
Nahao, miigwet, bamampi. So that was Justin Jah'Kota, Holness. A person of just endless energy and excitement, always busy doing a multiplicity of things. And I love that he's heading into a place of great influence for leadership. Sorry, my phone is still hooked up to the recording here. I want to offer special thanks to our sponsors. This work would not be possible without sponsorship and collaboration, and we're always looking for sponsors. But we're also really reminding you to listen, to provide comments, and to share widely what it is you're listening to if you're enjoying it, because we're doing our best to really uplift our communities in the best ways possible. So I want to first thank the town of Aurora for their endless support and belief in this project. Of course, the Wholesome Conscious and Palomino Gordon Law diehards always with us. Design de Plume, who created our amazing logo. And as always, we are powered by Neighbor Studio. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks again for joining us. See you next time.